I've been there, done that. This is what's about to happen. I know everything. I have a dossier. But how do we fight that? There are two ways we can see things. We can see things from a situational perspective or a dispositional perspective. When you see things from a situational perspective, it means that things are happening because of the circumstances. So you're acting in a certain way because of the context you're inserted in. If things are seen from a dispositional perspective, then it's because they are what they are. And that's it, period. There's no way there's no way we can change anything. Looking at this list here, at first, what comes to our minds may be that everything is dispositional. So, well, these are the students who never really speak English. They just don't. Or, they're teenagers, teenagers act like that. Or, they're latecomers because they're lazy and this is who they are. They don't want to be here in class, so really there's nothing I can do about that. They're impolite because they don't respect me when I'm speaking. The thing is, from all of these things, the ones that are actually dispositional is the fact that there was no ventilation. Really, there's nothing I can do. It's a fact. There was not a fan in the room, so it was hot. And that this is the time that we have to teach them. Their age doesn't really matter that much if you think about that. You're welcome. Aren't there teenagers who are actually super nice? And aren't there teenagers who are sometimes terrible and sometimes super nice? Maybe we just don't get to see the moments in which those teenagers are the super nice teenagers. I mean, their parents love them, right? There must be a reason. The thing is, I started investigating what was going on. And I found out, for example, that they were late because they were hungry. Instead of going upstairs to go to my room, they would have to go downstairs where the canteen is, buy something, and then go upstairs all over again, and then come to class. And they thought, I shouldn't eat in class, so I'm not going to bring my food to the lesson. And we solved that by just making a deal. Like, okay, yes, you can eat in class, that's okay. Or if your school doesn't allow that, maybe you can agree to, okay, you're going to eat half of the food you buy, because then it's faster, and then you come to class, it's only 50 minutes, then after that you can eat the other half. I found out that they were interrupting me because they were actually having fun with each other. They were not from the same group in the school they were studying at. They came from different groups, but sort of like every year they changed groups so they knew each other. And when they came to English class, it was the moment they got to see their friends from the previous year. They were like, you're here, so it's so nice. You know what I did today? Yeah, so social. They wanted to talk, as we do when we arrive at work, They used too much Portuguese because, and then of course it was sort of my fault. They were using English for the tasks that I proposed. So I would say, answer these questions, discuss them with the partner, then they would speak English. But when they were talking to me about, what they did in the weekend, they wouldn't. And the thing is, I had to keep reminding them that English should be used all around. They just didn't have enough working memory at that age to remember. Like kids, you tell them, you shouldn't do it. And they do it again. And then you tell them, you shouldn't do it. And they do it again and again and again and again. Teenagers at this age, they haven't fully developed their prefrontal cortex. And this is biological. They haven't. It's part of their development. And because of that, they can't control their impulses. Not completely, at least. And that's why they'll say mean things sometimes. That's why they'll go like, oh. And then after that, maybe do the exercise. And the problem is if we stick too much to the, then we may end up trapped. And do like, this is the teenager who never respects me, so I'm going to go at the jugular. You're going to do this exercise, And finally, there was a messy room because there was a cleaning lady who was hired to clean their rooms in the morning. So whenever they finished the lesson, they would go and they had sort of a 5-minute break before the following lesson, and the cleaning lady would come, clean the room, and they would arrive and it was cleaned. In my case, there wasn't. But in the morning lessons, that's what happened. So they didn't even realize that nobody would clean that. It wasn't like, I don't want to clean it. But it was, I don't have to, I'm not used to doing it. Funny. But shifting my perspective, sorry? There you go. Of course, in my personal opinion, if I see the room messy and dirty, and I will go and I'll clean it, I'll organize it, because I've used it. But then again, they're teenagers, right? Can we actually expect them to do things we don't tell them to all the time? I'm not so sure. But changing my perspective wasn't enough. I was aware of what was going on, but I still had a conflict. And conflict here will be defined as either two individuals or two groups of individuals who have the same objective, but take actions that are that conflict with each other, or individuals or groups who have different objectives and therefore end up getting into conflict. The thing is, my learners wanted to study English, or at least they wanted to speak English. Maybe they didn't want to go through the studying. And I wanted them to speak English. So we had the same objectives. The problem was we were taking actions that didn't really go along well. I've sort of systematized 5 of the steps that I took based on social psychology to deal with that conflict specifically. And hopefully this can help you deal with conflicts in other contexts as well. So first of all, don't fall into the trap of first impressions. We need to be very much aware. Sorry. We need to be very much aware of the things that are actually situational and the things that are dispositional. And then if they're dispositional and I can't change it, I need to apply the frozen technique. Let it go. You won't be able to change it. Why would you stress so much about it, right? Second one, you need to communicate. You will only know if they actually have the same objectives as you do, or they will only know that you have the same objectives that they do if you actually talk about it. And you need to talk about your problems. Like, guys, this is what's going on, and I'm not here to lecture you. I'm here to understand. Why are these things going on? Third of all, regulate. Studies show that if you actually build rules together, they're more likely to be followed. So if I actually take an active role in coming up with the rules that I will have to follow, I'm more likely to actually agree with them. Small groups make for bigger responsibilities. Of course, it's not necessarily a reality for everyone, but I was teaching 21 teenagers. And 21 teenagers are very difficult to deal with. If they are 1 in 21, that's very difficult to feel responsible for something. You know those people who will, I don't know, in the middle of the crowd do something horrendous, but then if they are the other person in the room, like they're only 2, they won't? You know that kind of thing? Like people will pick their nose when they're in their cars in traffic, but they won't pick their nose when they're talking to you in front of you. That's because they feel more perceived. And when you feel more perceived, the responsibility raises. Of course, when you're talking about a group of 21, how do you make it smaller? You just tell them, okay, so 15 of you are not enrolled anymore? Don't come. Or can you come 5 at a time? That's not possible. But we're gonna talk about that. Besides increasing the sense of responsibility, it also increases the perception of success. When I'm successful among 21 people, I'm not really that successful. But when I'm successful among 4 people, you know, that's important. Yeah, I'm the guy or the girl. And we need to reduce mistrust. Many studies on cooperation will show that if you have a slight hint that someone will not cooperate, you're less likely to cooperate yourself. Sort of like, you're not doing your part, why should I? You know that? And this is actually the same thing that affects people when they're deciding whether they're going to recycle or not. So, nobody recycles. You know, it's like everyone says it's the right thing to do. You know you should be doing it, and you still won't. Because it won't make a difference. Same thing with voting. Have you ever heard from anyone, yeah, I love this candidate, but I'm not going to vote for him because he doesn't have any chance of winning, really. And everyone who would vote for him will actually vote for the other person who's more likely to win. So I'll just vote for that person too. Have you ever heard that? Or worse, and then you don't have to share if you don't feel comfortable. Have you ever said that? Have you ever felt like that? There are many studies on littering, on violence, on horrendous crimes like raping and murder that actually come down to this. People think that they won't be perceived, or people think that nobody will care, people think that nobody will do their parts, then it doesn't really matter what I do. Nobody will see it. Nobody will ever know. But this is what I did. One day, I just wrote down all of the problems that I perceived as problems on the board. And it took me a whole lesson. I'm not ashamed to admit it, but yes, if you decide to do something like that, it takes a while. I wrote down everything I saw as problems on the board, and I said, guys, these are the problems that I think are happening. Is there any other problem that you are perceiving? And then they come up with more things that I didn't think were problems. And then I said, okay, you're going to get together in groups of 4 or 5 or trios. You will discuss why you think these things are happening. Why do you think the people who are doing this are doing this? And it was sort of a critical thinking exercise because they actually had to use empathy. Like, okay, why does Otavinho always interrupt the teacher? They actually had to come up with a reason. There wasn't, he's annoying. That's why. And I let them discuss that. After they discussed it, we talked about the reasons why things happened, and we were sort of negotiating. So like, okay, it's because you arrive and then you talk to each other for 10 minutes because you want to, have that moment with your friends. Is it something very important? Should we be doing that for the lesson or not? And that kind of thing. I have to admit, of course, it was kind of guided because I wanted them to be willing to learn English. Second step was, they came up with solutions. So you know why people are doing the things they're doing. Now you're going to come up with solutions. Solutions that you would actually follow. So don't come and say like, oh, Jorginho should never speak again. He'll arrive, he'll be quiet for 50 minutes, then he's going home. This is how he's not going to be annoying. Would you be willing to do that? That was my question. Think of a rule that you would follow. And they did. And what I did was, I brought cards of different colors, and I randomly wrote their names on the back of each of the cards. And I told them, this is your responsibility card. You're going to write down on the other side of the card all of the rules that you have come up with. And they did. They were the ones going through all the rules, and they wrote it down, everything. And then what I did was, you see they have different colors here? They were grouped. And they were responsible for helping their group follow the rules. Which meant that the yellow group the members of the yellow group were perceived by each other. Not the whole classroom, not the teacher, but each other. So I would have to go and tell my partner and say, look, you're part of the yellow group. You have to be quiet because the teacher is speaking. This is the rule. Not all of them felt comfortable to do that. So I was open and did like, okay, you can talk to me in case you feel you shouldn't be the one talking. But I encouraged them to take this active role and tell other people that they're doing something wrong. Which is, I hope, the kind of thing that may impact them to actually be empowered when they see something wrong happening in real life. How did this help then? First of all, we communicated, so we all knew which page we were on. we regulated, we all built the rules together, and we all decided that we were willing to follow those rules. We made small groups, increasing responsibility, and we reduced mistrust, because once they were in smaller groups, they felt like they had they were accountable for their actions, you know? Of course, there were some students who said, but Jorginho is always the one who, no. And I'm not going to say that was perfect, but it helped me a lot, because there were many students who became a lot more conscious of the actions they were taking. Imagine that difference from the following teachers. Imagine that difference in your own rooms for 6 months, or 4 months for that matter. You're going to have a tool to resort to. Look, this is what we agreed on. You said you would follow it. If you're not happy about it, do you think we should change it? And then change it together again. Renew the energy of the rules. That could be an idea. The second case was, well, we're talking about a group identity, right? What if it's that one student who won't do what you need them to do? Like, in my case, it was taking notes. I had a group of upper intermediate students who just wouldn't take notes of new vocabulary. And of course, after 3 lessons, when they had to practice that vocabulary again, they wouldn't remember anything. And they would go like, how do you say blah? And is it the word you're looking for? Or they would go just for, yeah, it was nice. It was good instead of marvelous, wonderful, amazing, the vocabulary that they had learned. What do we do then? Because you can't just tell them, oh, here's a rule that you have come up with, and you're going to be the one telling yourself to follow it. I call this how to stop nagging. You know, are you familiar with the term nagging? Nagging is like, okay guys, now, you know that you should be taking notes, right? And then you just nag and nag and nag and nag and nag. And it comes through one year and then it goes out from the other. This is nagging, when you keep talking and complaining about something. Usually with no result. But how do we make these attitudes last? Let's say the person did take notes once. How do I make it happen again and again and again until it becomes something natural? Well, first of all, I think my research said we need to provide people with a model. We will do the things that other people do. And we do that with our parents, with our teachers, with sometimes our idols. Second of all, we need to praise them for their individual efforts. So yes, you have done something amazing for yourself, and that's good. Keep doing that because it was good. We need to show genuine interest in their development. So if I tell you once, it's amazing that you take notes, you're going to be learning a lot, and then throughout the rest of the term, it doesn't really matter if they're taking notes or not, I won't comment on it. And we need to gradually increase responsibility. They can't be overwhelmed with the whole responsibility of taking notes of everything at once, or whatever other action you want them to do. So what I did was this idea here. First of all, I'm a person who takes lots of notes, and I like using colors, highlighters, Post-its. I'm very organized. Some people look at my notebook, they think I'm a freak, but it's okay. I'm cool with that. What I did was, I brought them my own notes. And I showed them my notebooks and said, guys, look, this is how I take notes, and I'm learning French, and it's been helping me a lot. And I'm telling you because I've been there, I've learned English, and now I'm learning another language. And this has been helping me a lot. So let's try to do something like this. Try to use one of the ideas I'm showing you today. Didn't work for very long. But what I did was, I brought them these here. And I said, these are my pens, my highlighters, my Post-its. If you have it in your school, maybe you can use the school's material. And look, I really want you to have the experience of taking notes using different colors. Because it has helped me visualize the things I learned. It has helped me remember things that are important. And I want you to try the same. If you don't want to buy your own colors, that's okay. But come and use one of these here. They're mine, but they're free for you to use. This is how I decided to show them genuine interest. I was making my materials available. Another thing I did was, whenever they used those materials, or whenever they organized their notes in a certain way, I would praise them. And I would go like, okay, this is really nice that you're doing it. Explicitly saying, it's nice that you're taking notes of that word because it's new. It sounds very silly, but a very funny effect happened on my upper group. The other people started gradually taking notes as well. I don't know if it's some kind of need that they had, but the fact that I praised some students in the beginning encouraged the others to take notes as well and receive praise as well. Not exactly, but I encouraged them to personalize it. Sorry? They did. They started taking notes. For example, when I give feedback to students and I write things down on the board, I try to separate the things that I'm giving feedback on using different colors. So all my students know that blue is for vocabulary, purple is pronunciation, green is grammar, orange is discourse or functional language, and that kind of thing. And I organized my notes on the board to make it the model that I would want them to follow. Some students said, I don't like to use colors. What would be an alternative to that? I tried using shapes. So I would draw a triangle before the blue color thing, so they know the triangle stands for vocabulary, or a circle for grammar, or a square for pronunciation. Any different idea that you may have to serve as a model and to encourage students to have different ideas of how they can do the stuff you want them to do is valid. The thing is, I had very positive results. I had a student actually tell me, and that was beautiful. He said, I never really took notes because I didn't see why I should take them. It's not relevant. And also takes time. Because, you've filled the board out with beautiful feedback, or you've explained lots of new vocabulary, and then they go and do and never look at that picture again. Do you have students who do that sometimes? Yeah, you taught me something nice? Some of them do go back to their notes. I'll give them that. But most of them didn't. And I had evidence, right? They weren't using what they learned. Well, anyways, the thing is, after they started sort of getting hooked into it, it was the moment they had to see that that was actually beneficial. So I started bringing them comparisons of feedback before they started taking notes and after they started taking notes, and their improvement was amazing. And I actually had proof, because I said, Júlio, you said this in February, we're in May, and you have just said this. And you know what? In February, you didn't use any of the vocabulary you learned. And in May, you're using this and this and this, which are the things you learned 3 lessons ago. So giving them constant praise on their efforts for taking notes and making them see the benefits of doing that helped me a lot. And then again, these things here, they don't have to be applicable only to taking notes. They can be applicable to anything you want them to do in class. Again, you will have to adapt to what you want them to do. And you will have to adapt to your own reality. But, dica do tio, they tend to work very well with teenagers. I don't know what's going on in their brains, but they tend to work much better than with adults. I know that you all are very creative. I don't think you would be here if you weren't interested in developing. So this is part of what I have learned and what I have applied and that you can take home. So please do take it and try to apply some of these things to your own reality. Think of how you're going to use these ideas. If you're not going to be able to use exactly the same idea, and then again, even if you do, it may be a failure because in my context, it worked. And I tried many other things that did not work. I'm just presenting you the good results, right? Think of the things that you will be able to take away and actually apply. Tell the person next to you one thing that you are taking with you from this workshop. One thing you think will be nice to try with your own students. Off you go. What's your name? Sorry. Júlio, yes.
You mentioned that you have a book of feedback notebook.
Yes. I usually take notes of whatever students say using their names and the date. so that they can compare improvement. And also it helps if you have, you know, those notebooks with different sections, you know, like university notebooks, those kind of things. It helps if you do that, yeah, because I have one part of the notebook for every group, and then I can just go to that one group and give them evidence of what they learned. Okay, thank you. Thank you. That's the last thank you I'm gonna say, I promise you. What are you gonna try with Otavinho?
We were talking about what we were going to do.
Okay.
After this. So something that's old, but it worked in the past, is to have a notebook vocabulary. For vocabulary, and it really works if you have a page for A and B and C and review all the information. It worked in the past, and I think it's going to work again.
And maybe in order to get students to engage in it, you use these techniques here, yes. You can also use the lexical book app that Andrea suggested in her presentation. It is really useful for people who are tech savvies. If you're into that and you want to give it a shot, I would strongly recommend you. I also think that, and that's my opinion only, I prefer paper, but I also think that we sometimes disregard some things because we didn't have that experience. And then again, what is our first impression on that, you know? Like, I'm not going to use this app because it's just so complicated because we couldn't understand it. Anything else that you're...
I use the feedback notebook.
Okay.
I used to take notes of the feedback, but not on a particular part of my notebook. It's in general.
And you know what's interesting about it? You can actually keep your notes and use it as evidence for students and parents. Look, this is the feedback I gave your son in March, blah, 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 blah. And this is the feedback I gave him in June, blah, 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 which is much better. So I think we should work on this and this and that, you know, giving them evidence to support the action that you're taking with that particular student. Yes?
Sorry.
That's okay.
To share something with you. So,
What's your name? Sorry.
Alice.
Talison, okay.
So I think your idea is very nice, but the problem is I work with beginners, so it doesn't work. Because I ask them to communicate with each other, try to participate in the class, but they have no language, so how can they communicate?
One thing I like to do is give them language for tasks, so you gradually build their repertoire without it being the target language of the lesson. So for example, they're going to discuss, I don't know, they've done a reading activity. They had to choose the right alternative. I'll tell them to compare their answers, and I'll go for, guys, you're going to use these expressions. I think da-da-da is correct, I think da-da. And then I start changing the language I give them to give them sort of these side language items. For example, I like this better than this, and I give them the prompt. And then later you can use the same language for the genuine interaction.
It does work very well when they communicate with me, but they can't communicate with each other, so I think they get very shy, I don't know why. So I need to ask them, okay, let's try to do that. So talk to me and they will try to do it. Then I ask them to communicate, just don't do this.
It could be, I think something that works really well for beginners to feel more confident is that, of course, it takes time of the lesson, but I think it's really, the results are worth it. Try giving them the same practice more than once, usually 3 or 4 times, one after the other. And sort of like, okay, you're going to do this, you have to use these expressions. I think number 1 is correct, I think number 2 is correct, or I think you're wrong, I'm sorry, I don't get, I don't know, some of the expressions. Use exactly these. Go. And then they do it. Then I go, okay, now change partners. You're going to do it again. Ta, 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 ta. Change partners. Yeah, and you can have a mini feedback slot in which you do. In the first time you tried it, how did you feel? Blah, blah, blah. And in the end, did you feel more confident? Did you use the expressions more naturally? And it's something quicker, especially because I think beginners are sort of anxious sometimes, and they want to see learning happening, you know? And when you do this, they see learning happening in the same lesson. In the beginning of the lesson, were you capable of doing that? No. And right now, do you feel capable of doing it? Yes. Go try it, and I'll show you my email, so please let me know if things worked. By the way, I really want to know if you try things out, okay? Just for us to wrap up then, studying how we relate to each other, not necessarily through social psychology, may help us a lot in our classroom. In fact, this is interesting because this is why, by the way, the name of the presentation is Dance, Students Dance. I think that we often try to make students dance to our own music, and sort of trying to force that upon them may not be the best plan ever, but sort of learning what kind of music they do like to dance, and then adapting things and saying, look, yes, this dance is nice, but look at this other one as well. So learning how we relate to each other may help us build stronger rapport and group cohesiveness. And not only stronger rapport between students, but also rapport with us. Students who trust us are more likely to actually do the things that we suggest them to do. So if a student doesn't really trust your work or doesn't really trust that you're trying the best to actually make them learn, will they ever believe that taking notes will help them? Perhaps not, because that takes a lot of time to see, for them to see the results. So student collaboration may come from that. Student collaboration, of course, among peers, so encouraging them to help each other and to work with each other may be very helpful. And with us. So I really need you guys to do this so that we all achieve a certain objective. And finally, you may end up having greater student satisfaction and more effective teaching and learning. I like to think of the classroom as sort of a dance floor. So we're the DJs, and we're the ones who are playing the music for students to dance. And we decide the tune, we decide the volume, we decide when the music stops. But we also need to have a little fun. So it's okay to join them and dance a little bit as well. Remember that when you decide to apply it to your lesson. Thank you very much. This is the reference if you want to check it, and that's my email. Thank you.